A lot of guitar players know a number of scale patterns. Some will even know what keys they relate to, but very few guitar players understand what scales are best applied and when they need to be used within a song, and even less will know why they work. So that's what we're going to cover on this episode of the Guitar Blog Insider. 90% of the scales we use are from key signatures. Those keys will relate to which type of scale will need to be used over a chord progression. And the chords in that progression also relate to the key. So if you can tie together how the chords and the scales relate to the overall key signature, you'll have all the information that you're going to need to play guitar solos and licks over 90% of the songs that you come across. Now, let me explain this a little bit further. Let's say you take a key, like we'll use A major, for instance, right? A major, if you look it up in any key signature book, it's going to show you that you have three sharps there, F, C, and G. So if you take the tones off of an A and you line them up, as long as you put those sharps in, you're going to have the key of A major. So A, B, C sharp, D, E, F sharp, G sharp, A forms the key, but it also forms the scale. Now from that scale, we can also get all the chords that relate over to that key, and they're really simple to build as well. All you do is you take the scale and you jump through every tone, going every second note. Let me show you what I mean. A would jump to C sharp, and then C sharp would move to E, and that would form our first chord in the key of A major. It would just be an A major chord. If I go to the second note of B, B, D, F sharp, I'm traveling again, every second note of the key signature, B, D, F sharp, every second note, I get the next chord in the key, it's B minor. If I went to the next tone, which is C sharp, and I did the same thing, every second note off C sharp, E, G sharp, I've just formed a C sharp minor chord. And you can keep going through the key, and when you do that with all 7 tones, you wind up with the harmony, the chords that are related to the key. So now you can understand the key signature. It's a lot of stuff. It's showing you what's going on with the sharps or the flats. It's showing you what's happening with the structure of the scale. And it's also giving you the concept of what chords are related. Now, what I want to do next is I'm going to take this key of A major and I'm going to build a chord progression with it. I'm going to play it for you, and then we're going to talk about it a bit. Well, when we're working within a key signature, we need to understand a few details about the key. We need to understand the sharps and the flats that are found within it, and how the scale's set up, and how the chords move from one to each other, and create the stresses and accents. And that sound that we're listening for on how chords get stressed out and then they accent their way back to some kind of resolution, that's called a cadence in music. And the way chords are moving, from bar to bar and then even within a measure, they establish an impression of kind of getting stressed out and then relaxing more. And when the chords become too stressed, they're going to want to relax out to what we would call a home bass chord, and this is referred to as resolution. Now, even if you don't know a lot about music theory, you'll be able to hear these ideas occur just from listening. Now, in our progression, we can clearly tell that the A major chord is our home chord. And this is evident from the stress that leads us to each occurrence of the A major chord across the measures. Now, something to take note of is how that A chord in the progression we were using is preceded by E. And that pull that we get from going from the E back to the A. In music, we call that a perfect cadence. Now, if you remember the progression, it went from A to C sharp to F sharp to E, and then back to A. And then it had the turnaround, taking it back to the A again. So there's your stresses and your accents bringing you around to that cadence point. Now, that's not the only kind of cadence that we need to watch out for. The other popular sound is called a plagal cadence. That's when the home chord is preceded by the 4th chord of the key. In the key of A major, that would be the D chord coming back around to our home chord of A. That's called a plagal cadence. Let me do that same progression, or close to the same progression again, but this time I'm going to swap out the movement of the E traveling back to the A with the D chord, the 4th chord of the key, pulling back to the A. Check this out. So as you can tell, chord progressions and key signatures are tied together by how the chords both function measure to measure, as well as how they create some stress and then relax that stress through different forms of resolution. But there's still another element to all this, and it's related to the tonality. Sometimes called the major or minor color of a progression. This is actually very easy to distinguish once you can understand resolution, because the cadence will point you to the resolution chord and allow you to hear the home chord. And this means if your home chord is minor, you're dealing with a minor tonality progression. Now let's use that same key signature to create a resolution into what's called a relative minor. Now in the key of A major, our relative minor is F sharp minor. I have a progression for you in F sharp minor. I'm going to play it right now. Okay, did you notice how the F sharp minor chord becomes the point of resolution and forms the impression of a home chord sound across those chord changes? You know, we're starting on that F sharp minor sound, moving to C sharp minor, building it through the D to E, back to the home chord. And then we're just going to turn that around again. Hear that impression of home chord sound when you move through the changes. This is exactly what you're listening for when it comes to understanding what a series of chord changes are doing for you musically, and how those stresses and relaxation elements all influence the sound of the progression. Some of it's theoretical. It's good to know and understand what's going on with scales, harmony, chord progressions, key signatures, but a lot of this is really based upon listening and figuring out changes in chord movements, because the better you get at that, the more fine-tuned your ear becomes, and after some time you won't have any problem just listening to a chord progression, understanding what the key center is, going back to the elements and the ideas based upon the key signature, how the scales fit, and all that stuff. And that leads us into our next element that I want to discuss, which is going to be melody, composing melodic ideas, and of course guitar solos. Alright, so the next step involves what scale you need to consider for performing a melodic line. You know, doing guitar solos, writing melodies. As you could tell from the chord progressions, we have colors of both major and minor, and those colors also tell us whether we need to play the major or minor scales over our progressions. Now, something that happens that's kind of a tough thing to get around for a lot of players in the early days is the full scales, like those 7-tone scales. They have a lot of notes, you know, whether you're in major or you're doing minor. There's a lot of notes to them. So one of the things you can do and make it a lot easier on yourself is to just select the sounds of either major or minor pentatonic instead. The pentatonic scales have 5 notes instead of 7, and we eliminate all the half steps that are happening with the full scales, and it makes it a lot more like an arpeggio, which is a great way to get cool melodies directed right into the sound of the key center and all that. So what I've done here is I've taken an A major progression that we looked at before a little bit earlier in the lesson here, and I'm going to use that again, and I'm going to create a melody line in the key of A major, but I'm going to exclusively use the A major pentatonic scale just to show you how nice and connected that major pentatonic can be for, you know, helping you get ideas melodically over top of the key of A major progression. So let's have a listen to that right now. Tell the pentatonic scale, it's fantastic for creating melody lines over progressions because it has such a natural lean toward creating melody. The scale has no half steps, making it very similar to an arpeggio, and this gives it the ability, you know, to have a group of notes there producing melody quite easily for you. Now, just as with major pentatonic being a fantastic way to create melody over major keys, the minor pentatonic is also excellent for producing melody over minor situations. Let's use F sharp minor pentatonic and create a melody over our F sharp minor chord progression. I've got something worked out already for you. Let's zoom in on the guitar and check this melody out. as you can tell, the application of the pentatonic scale for any kind of melodic idea once again works so nicely here in the minor key because it uses notes that are closely related to the arpeggios, which offers us an excellent way to connect to the chord tones. So this means that from the information we've covered here in this short video, you're now aware of the value in understanding key signatures. You've noticed how chords from the key relate to the color of the tonality through the use of the cadence points we discussed, and you now know the strength that exists from using the major and minor pentatonic as one of the best starter scales for creating melody. From here now, you can begin going even further with all these ideas into using other scales and modes, and all this information works in the same way regardless of the key you're in or the musical style that you're in or the notes involved. And while some styles like maybe jazz or classical harmony can become slightly more complex in their nature of how these ideas are applied, the principles are all still the same across every style of music. Well, I'd like to end the lesson by saying thanks for joining me. If you want to learn more about what I do as an online guitar teacher, then head over to my website at creativeguitarstudio.com and sign up for your free lifetime membership. When you want more, you can always upgrade your package to either a basic monthly or the premium annual lesson package and start studying all the guitar courses I've organized for the members of my website. Also, I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on all this in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more. Thanks again, and we'll catch up next week for another episode of the Guitar Blog Insider. When it comes to online guitar lessons, there's no place better than creativeguitarstudio.com. General membership to the site is always free, and paid memberships to access our step-by-step beginner, intermediate, and advanced guitar programs are offered in reasonable monthly and annual packages. Skype lessons are also available if you need more specific instruction one-on-one to discuss the finer details of your guitar playing. Sign up today at creativeguitarstudio.com. I've got 25 years experience teaching guitar and have written a well-organized step-by-step guitar course. Head over to my website at creativeguitarstudio.com and sign up for a free membership today. Join the thousands of members worldwide who have already enrolled. There's no need to try learning the guitar on your own. Let me help you become the best guitar player that you can be.